Yeah, it's funny. I always use Star Wars as a comparison. When Star Wars came out, uh, a group of friends and I went to see it. And one of the friends that went to see it with me was Sunzi, my good friend that was sent to China in our group. And he found it absolutely hilariously entertaining, as did I. But not so much the movie we found entertaining was the way the audience reacted to this science fiction that to us was so entertaining to see humans delighting in the prospect of jumping around from planet to planet and things like that. We left thinking or saying, excuse me, that this would create a whole generation of humans whose paradigm was now shifted towards the possibility that space travel is not something of science fiction, but something that is almost their birthright. And that's very important because most people right now that I run into on your planet believe in aliens. It's a question that I get asked a lot, ironically, is if I believe in aliens, extraterrestrial beings. Now, those of you who know me know, of course, how silly a question that is being posed to me, but I'm often asked by people who are very high-ranking when I am brought in as a consultant, you would say. And we begin to discuss some of the more interesting archaeological and anthropological finds that have been unearthed on your planet over the last about 16 or 17 years. I always answer the question the same way. Absolutely, I do. And proof is coming. And I say this because it's very important for me to speak truthfully to these people who are in positions of power. As democracy has taken hold on this planet and become the government of choice for so many of you, it creates a quandary for people like me. What happens is I go in and consult with one leader. I'm able to tell them certain things. Obviously, I cannot disclose the whole story to anyone. But I tell them a lot of stuff, and then a few years later, I'm brought in, and it's somebody completely different. Now, so far, to the best of my knowledge, none of what I discuss with these world leaders has ever been made public. I believe that 90+% of what's discussed with world leaders, not by me, but by other world leaders, is not made public. When that character from Sweden or Australia, that Assange guy, with his WikiLeaks site, made all this public recently, what actually goes on, that was a very small tip of the iceberg, what he released, what's really said. It created a very unusual ripple effect, or bump in the road. What's the word to use? A hitch in my plans. Because I'm mentioned in those WikiLeaks documents. Not by name. You folks are the only ones that know me by my actual name, which is Yahweh. I am always referred to formally as Yahweh of Nibiru, or Yahweh of the Anunnaki. I am director, would be the word, or captain, or what would you say, Pope? Is that a word for leader? Of the Delta Soul Project. And I'm special envoy to His Majesty, the 7th Emperor of Nibiru, whose names cannot be written, Lord of the Anunnaki. But when I introduce myself to people, or when I'm brought in, I'm typically told the name that they've been given up front. It's usually a very generic name, Hans or Steve or Liam. Last name would be equally as forgettable. But they set the table for me well, because there are people in positions of power around the world who are not affected by your democratic swings back and forth. The people who really run your country no matter where you live, their names are not listed on the high rolls of government. They're not even listed, probably, on many of the large financial institutions that they sit at the helm of. Nevertheless, they exist. Men and women, mostly men, mostly, strangely enough, Caucasian men, who have had passed down to them over the last tens of thousands of years secret knowledge about how to manipulate the human animal. When I say human animal, I don't mean any disrespect by that. I just mean that surely you've seen the mice experiments where you put one of your mice, not sure how you say that in English, in a maze, and if they go the correct way and earn their reward, their small snack or food stuff, they remember that. The same thing applies to many mammals, humans being one of them, where you are susceptible to programming. Humans right now around the globe are being programmed by the very device that you will probably eventually listen to me on. Because I'm going to send these tapes to Vincent, and he's going to put them, I hope, on YouTube, or put them up for download as the audio files themselves. But computers have been very effective at programming the human species. Humans are very susceptible to lights and sound and subliminal suggestions. Some people have accused me of being somehow capable of implanting subliminal messages in the minds of those with whom I speak, because I have a very unique way of convincing people to go along with what I need them to do. Now, this is no magic, and this is no subliminal trickery. This comes from being on your planet for 3,500 years and knowing a lot of humans. Humans are very predictable. You're driven by one of three things: your heart, your mind, or your sex organs. All of you seem to fall into one of those three categories. There are some who are emotional, who follow their passions. They're driven by their heart. There are some who seek power and intellectual dominance, creature comforts. Those are driven by the mind. And there are those among you who seek nothing more than sexual gratification. It may seem weird to say that, but many of the world leaders right now have worked so hard to come to power because of their insatiable appetites for extreme sexual encounters. I don't want to name names, because I may end up in their country, respectively, or countries, over the next little while, and I want to be, for the most part, a welcome guest there. But the information comes out every once in a while. It's just usually suppressed, as are most things. Humans are also very susceptible, for some reason, to the media, newspapers, radio, television, and yet very distrusting of word of mouth. If you read something in the newspaper or hear it on the news said or written by a stranger, you're skeptical. You don't know if that's really true or not. Yet if your friend shares a personal experience, let's say your friend shares an experience with you about something that you find illogical. Let's say they say to you, I feel like I somehow had an encounter with a UFO or an ET, you would call them. Your first reaction might be to be skeptical from someone you've known all your life. It's very interesting with humans. Humans are skeptical by nature, except on things which they are programmed not to be. And let me explain that, because I probably butchered that sentence. Humans very much like mostly to have a routine. They like to know what's going to come next. Even people who say they like surprises would not like to wake up tomorrow and find out they were unable to eat for the day. So people like to have routines in their lives. They like to have experience. Humans are all about experience and expectations. You're born, you start having experiences. What happens in your life creates programming within your mind that gives you expectation when new experiences happen. You have expectation of what you are going to experience because of what you've experienced before. I hope that makes some sense. So based on your previous experiences, that will determine your expectation. Now, since so many people have been introduced to the mainstream media's propaganda machine, TV, internet, radio, many of my friends in the music industry, for instance, never considered myself a musician at all, but I think Vince would probably agree, and I think that Prince would also agree, and Bono has told me this on several occasions, that there are people in the music business who seem almost to fall from the sky, serve a certain purpose. They didn't write this song that they're singing along to or on TV playing along to. They're pulled up from the ranks, tossed out to the public, fed upon for a few months, then cast aside for someone new. And there seems to be no limit to the line of humans waiting in line for that opportunity, for their 15 minutes of fame. Guys, ladies and gentlemen, my friends, most people I know who are what you would consider famous don't enjoy the famous aspect of their career. I think most of them enjoy the money. Most of the ones I'm friends with, I can honestly say, have done very good things with a big chunk of the money they've earned, and they've worked very hard and they deserve it. But the fame aspect, there's special counselors, what you would call a behavioral counselor, I believe, a coach, behavioral coach. I'm not sure the exact term to use here, that specialize in when someone becomes famous, sitting down with them and explaining this is what to expect, this is how others have found an effective way to handle that type of situation or handle that type of what's going on, this transition into having people recognize you and strangers wanting to ask you nosy questions and people feeling almost as if they're entitled to a glimpse into your personal life because they are adoring you in your career. Fame can be a very uncomfortable thing for humans. And most people seem to have a misconception that famous people are by and large happy. Most of them that I have met are not. They lived lives that are not what they had expected, you might say. They don't have the freedom that they once had. And that may be because they fear going places and being recognized and being hassled, but mostly what I mean is that people don't treat them the same anymore. They feel as if almost they don't have many real friends. A lot of them will tell me. And I think that's why so many of what you would call celebrities end up as couples together, is because they feel like that's the only type of person that can understand what they feel, which is you never really know if this, because so many people are telling you they love you and everything you're doing is great, is that also going on in your friendships and your personal life? That's kind of a sidetrack there. I can imagine Vincent listening to this tape. As I look at the counter, it's going on 30 minutes, so this would be the end of his second YouTube. Rolling his eyes at me, saying, "Oh, Yaji, why do you sidetrack?" But Vince, the most important asset that we have on this planet right now is time. I enjoy every second I am on your planet. I cherish every person I get a chance to meet. With very few exceptions, humans have been so good as a species.